A couple of weeks ago on episode 53 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast, I actually did a episode on repurposing your content. One of the suggestions that I had for repurposing was Pinterest. So I'm really ecstatic that today we are going to be talking about Pinterest for business. If you've never thought about using Pinterest as a marketing strategy in your business, then this is the episode for you. I have a special guest and she is a Pinterest queen. Hey, welcome to the Small Business Made Simple podcast, brought to you by socialmediaandmarketing.com.au. Being in business is never easy, but it can be simple, or at least simpler. Join me, your host Jen Donovan, every week where we focus on marketing, social media, and working towards simplifying your business. You with me? Let's do this.
Dream it big, 'cause someone out there listening. Everyone's got a voice to give, and it's time I heard you whistling, 'cause there's no point at all, in dreaming small.
Hey there, podcast family. Welcome to episode 56 of the Small Business Made Simple podcast. I have to say that I really looked forward to episode 52 so much, just to tick off that goal of doing a podcast every week for a whole year, that now I'm just like, what number am I up to? It no longer corresponds with the week of the year. So I'm a little bit confused. So if I stumble over what episode it is, I do apologize, but this is definitely episode 56. So anyway, welcome, and thank you for lending me your ears today. I know you have lots of choices out there, and I really appreciate you making me one of them. If you're a first-time listener, then oh my gosh, super welcome to you. I'm so pleased that you've landed here. I am the host, Jen Donovan, and it's my job via this podcast and my social media platforms to make your life or your business life just a little bit simpler, because business can be really lonely, it can be a little bit hard and a little bit complicated, but it's hardly ever easy. But it definitely should be simple or a little bit simpler. So that's my commitment to you on the Small Business Made Simple podcast. Of course, one of the ways that I can help make your life a little bit simpler is if you come and join my Facebook group, Like-Minded Business Owners. The link is in the show notes, which of course are at socialmediaandmarketing.com.au/56. The group is a really great place for you to go and just ask any questions that you want. I'm in there all the time answering them, but so are a lot of other amazing small business owners that are more than happy to help you along your journey as well. You can go to the show notes and get the link, or of course you can just search Like-Minded Business Owners in your search box on Facebook. Today, as I mentioned in the intro, I have a guest. Her name is Belinda, and she is from her business called Your Social Bee, and we are talking Pinterest for business. As I mentioned actually in the interview that you'll hear, Pinterest has always been a sit down on the couch, Friday night, wine and cheese in hand, scrolling to my heart's little content on Pinterest, going down numerous rabbit holes and only surfacing once again when I think, hang on, what was I looking for? If you're on Pinterest, you know exactly what I mean. You can just keep going down rabbit holes. But this year, Pinterest is actually a goal of mine. I do, obviously, these podcasts every week, and I actually blog regularly as well. So I have oodles of content. And yeah, oodles is clearly a tech word. But Pinterest just seemed like a fairly clear option for me to be able to repurpose some of my content. And it's really a way that I'm clearly not using at the moment, but it's also a way for me to break into an international market, which again is a goal for 2020. So I put in a Facebook group that I belong to that I was looking for a Pinterest legend to interview, and Belinda was recommended to me, and I reached out, and here we are. I have Belinda on the podcast. As I said, Belinda's business is Your Social Bee. There's a link in the show notes for her website, but basically it's yoursocialbee.com.au, and she is a Pinterest strategist and a manager, and Pinterest for business is definitely her zone of genius. So, if you've ever thought about Pinterest as a marketing strategy, or even if you haven't, I would highly recommend that you listen in. I think you'll be really surprised at the statistics around Pinterest, especially coming out of 2019. It really is a platform that's actually changing. I think you'll be surprised as to who the target market is and the type of businesses that are actually using it for marketing purposes. So, without holding Belinda up anymore, let's get Belinda on the podcast and welcome her. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Belinda. I'm really excited, A, to have you on the podcast, but B, to talk about Pinterest, because we've never talked about Pinterest on my podcast before. But for people who maybe don't know Belinda or perhaps don't know your social B, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So first of all, thanks so much for having me here. Really excited to be here, and I love talking about Pinterest, so that works out well. So my business is Your Social Bee, and basically I'm a Pinterest strategist and manager. So what that means is that I either manage and set up Pinterest accounts, and I also do like strategy sessions to teach people about Pinterest. And how I started, so I originally, when I first started up my business, I was thinking of doing social media marketing in general. And I think just over time, I decided to niche before I got too far with all of the social media platforms. I decided to niche into Pinterest because I'd always really liked Pinterest, and I hadn't necessarily thought of using it for business as well. I used it for personal, but yeah, like I think I've been on their back since when it first started up, I think it's 2010 or 11. So yeah, I really loved the platform, and I just, once I discovered the opportunities for business, I just sort of knew that was the direction I wanted to take. So here I am.
Well, you are a very small breed. I know that I've, reached out a couple of times looking for people to talk about Pinterest and hadn't really come across anybody. So I am really excited to have you on. Pinterest, as I was saying just before we started recording, Pinterest for me is Friday night on the couch with a glass of wine with my iPad and has absolutely nothing to do with business. So I'm really interested to find out how Pinterest can actually work for a business. But so when we're talking Pinterest, I guess there is that, is it for retail or is it for service-based businesses or is it for both?
It's for both. So basically Pinterest is for content creators. So whether you're a service-based business and you have blogs or podcasts or video content, or if you're a product-based business and you might have product images or blogs and video tutorials to go with it to show how to use your product or etc. Basically, if you've got the content and you've got the website where you can drive traffic to, then Pinterest will work for both.
Yeah, okay. And I know that it's something I say often, and you did say it off air just a few seconds ago about the fact that it's not really a social media platform, is it? We don't kind of classify it as that.
Yeah, no. So that's, well, I guess there's a few misconceptions about Pinterest, which we'll get to as well. But one of those is about it being a social media platform, and because people think that, they try and use the same strategy that they might use on Facebook or Instagram. But Pinterest is actually a visual search engine. So although it does often get sort of lumped in with the social media platforms, and sometimes it's easy, like I know in Google Analytics it's in that category, so sometimes it's easier, but technically it's a search engine. So it's more like YouTube or like Google than it is to Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah, right. That's a really great thought, actually. I had never really thought about explaining it that way, that it's more like Google or YouTube than what it is, like Instagram or Facebook. Yeah, interesting. Belinda, when it comes to Pinterest, what should the aim be of Pinterest? So if someone decides that whether they're service or product-based business and they decide to maybe look into Pinterest as a strategy in their business, what's the goal? Is the goal for sales? Is it for leads? Is it for sort of, top of mind marketing or traction back to your website? What's the actual goal of Pinterest?
So similar to other platforms, it's probably multifaceted and there are different purposes, but the most common and like what Pinterest is really powerful for is driving organic website traffic. So the goal would be perhaps to increase your website viewers, to grow your email list, to increase sales would be what a lot of, say, smaller businesses or entrepreneurs and bloggers is how most people use it. Pinterest does also have a paid advertising option, which is called their promoted pins. So in that case, I have seen that some like maybe bigger organizations and businesses will run campaigns where it might be focused on brand awareness. And some of those are really quite creative and effective. So yeah, there is array of options. It may be to drive brand awareness or off-site traffic, but what Pinterest is well known for is the ability to drive traffic to your website. So then it's your website's job to convert that traffic. So to get the people onto your email list, to make the sale, and basically to nurture them.
So really, would you say it's pretty much you need to have a website to have success on Pinterest?
I always highly recommend it. If you don't yet have a website, but say you're in a process of building one or rebranding, etc., and you know that you want Pinterest to be part of your strategy long term, then there's things that you can do to start building up your account. And I did that for a little while with mine before I actually had a website. So there are things that you can do if you know that that's what you're going to be using it for. But if the ultimate goal is to drive website traffic, then it's really going to work best with a website. And in saying that, a website where you can claim, it's what's called claiming your website. So the big platforms like WordPress and Squarespace, those sort of big platforms, and also Shopify and Etsy work really well. Because they've got those partnerships with Pinterest, it just means that when you're putting your content up there, it's linking to a domain that Pinterest trusts because you've been able to verify it's your website. So even though you could technically send it to like a Facebook page or an Instagram page, you're not likely to get the same sort of traction because you can't control those pages as much, whereas with a website, you've got full control. It's not as easy to track. So I do recommend having a website. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I guess if the ultimate goal is to drive traffic, you've got to have somewhere to drive traffic, and to have it driven to a platform you actually have control of is, I guess the end result, isn't it? That's where we want to send people to.
Yeah.
For anyone who's listening and is sort of thinking, I thought Pinterest was just for, redecorating my house or designing my garden or perhaps, planning my wedding, and we were talking about myths before. And I think this is one of is quite a myth that's still out there. So if that's not the only people on there, who is actually on Pinterest? What are the targets on Pinterest?
So all of those topics like weddings and food and fashion and all that sort of stuff, they are still popular on Pinterest, but there is a lot more to the platform than that. So it's not just for people that want to DIY their house or, find recipes sort of thing. So at the moment, the user base, it's still predominantly female. I think it's about 80% female at the moment. Although the new sign-ups over the last year or so have been closer to like 40 or 50% male. So that is shifting.
Okay.
And also those people that are on Pinterest, the women, they're not necessarily just looking to plan a wedding or whatever. So it's, I mean, a lot of the case they are looking to shop or looking for ideas or inspiration. And Pinterest actually talks about the fact that a lot of the audience, because it is sort of women aged, say, 25 to 55, they refer to those women as the deciders, in that they tend to make a lot of the household and buying decisions. And this is particularly in the US, but would, that would be applicable sort of worldwide.
I guess my next sort of question was, how is it popular in Australia, or is it growing in Australia? Because again, I think there is that misconception, or maybe it's not a misconception, that it is very much a US based or a United States based thing. Like, is there an audience in Australia, even if it is predominantly a female audience?
Yeah, so that's definitely another thing to point out, is when we're talking about the user base. So in the past, it probably has been more US focused, and actually really quite big in the US for quite a number of years. So I think a lot of Australian businesses wouldn't have necessarily, unless they had a US based or international audience, may not have considered Pinterest. But Pinterest has been going through a few changes in the last few years and really making the platform more business friendly. And they've been focusing on their international audience a lot. So now, and again, like, there's been sort of explosive growth in terms of like the number of people that use Pinterest on a monthly basis. And whilst that number isn't anywhere near as much as, say, Facebook, the amount of growth it's had, I think it's something like 300 million at the moment. And that's, I think, in about 2 years. I can't remember the exact number. It was either 150 or 180 million, but it would be coming up to almost doubling
Wow.
the user base. And it seems to be getting, a lot of that's probably been in the last 12 months. It just seems to be exponentially growing.
Yeah. And I suppose, like, from a business point of view, if one of the goals to Pinterest is to drive traffic, organic traffic to a website, then that's really hard to do these days on Facebook. Like, you put a link into your Facebook post and the algorithm is pretty much going to kill that post for you. Like, Mark Zuckerberg, bless his soul, is really trying to keep people on the platform. So even though the numbers mightn't be as big, the impact could actually be bigger.
Yeah, and the audience is different because they've sort of got more intent. Like, when people go to social media, they're predominantly there to be social, and yes, they're used to seeing business content, but it's not they're not necessarily in that sort of mindset that I'm here to shop. But when they go to Pinterest, it's a search engine, so they're searching for something, and they might not necessarily have the specifics of what they're searching, but they've got an idea, so they're looking for ideas and inspiration. So it's really actually quite unique because you can target people when they're at the beginning of their buying cycle. So they might be collecting ideas on, whether it's like planning their wedding and collecting ideas, or they want to buy a new pair of jeans, or they're looking for ideas for a reno. Like, there's a whole array of content on there, but yeah, they're starting to search for ideas, and so you can sort of target them, because when people go on Pinterest to search, 97% of the search activity is actually unbranded. So it's not really like Instagram where you follow influencers, etc. People don't go on and search, for a particular brand. They'll just search, jeans for women, or organic makeup, or etc. So they've got a vague idea of what they want, but they're still open to suggestions.
I think one
Um,
of the things that really shocked me, or not shocked me, but really made me open my eyes with Pinterest. I was working with a leadership coach, and I just happened to go on Pinterest and sort of typed in about leadership and that sort of thing. And the amount of content that was on there, it was kind of like, oh wow, I actually didn't expect this amount of content on a subject like leadership on a platform that I thought was, but mainly product based. So that was kind of a bit of a aha moment for me, was
yeah,
actually finding all that content.
yeah. So any sort of business service providers, so website developers, brand strategists, marketers, um, business coaches, like anyone that sort of provides services to entrepreneurs and like small business owners. There's definitely a huge market up there.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there's a few categories which people wouldn't necessarily, like, you've got all your common ones like your weddings and food, etc., that people know about, and travel. But yeah, there are some that people wouldn't necessarily think about. And also Pinterest is really good at releasing sort of like trends and what people are searching for. So you can get a good idea of the type of content that's going to go well. And a lot of people on Pinterest are in the mindset of like the popular searches are to do with like eco-friendly living and sustainability and ethical, like being ethical, supporting small business. So there's all of that sort of aspect. And then there's even like to do with, say, health and wellness, and like I'm talking broad health and wellness, whether it's diet related or nutrition, or if it's exercise plans,
or yoga, or mindfulness, and
that's massive on there at the moment, like mental well-being, self-development, spirituality is also really big. But I'm sorry, I realise I haven't actually answered your question about Australia, so I'll just quickly go back to that. Kind of got sidetracked.
Like we do.
Yeah, I know. Well, yeah, that's what I was saying. Like, I like to keep notes because there's so many things I can tell you. But yes, in answer to your question, the international user base has really grown in the last couple of years, and it's now 50% of users are from outside the US, and ongoing signups, I think, of around 50 or 60% are coming from outside the US. So that does include like Europe and UK and South America, etc., obviously, but they are really focusing on the international users, and actually just recently opened up the first ever office in Australia, in Sydney, back in August.
Oh, wow.
About 3 or 4 months ago. So yeah, they are really focusing on the international audience.
So, Belinda, I guess in the simplest form, how does Pinterest work? So if you put up a pin, assuming a really great graphic with maybe a great call to action, how do people find that, and how does that relate back to generating some organic traffic to your website? Like, just in a bit of a nutshell, how does it actually work?
Okay, so probably, I guess, going back to like what I said about how it's visual. Yeah, sorry, it's a visual search engine and not social media. So it means it's a very different strategy. It's a SEO and keyword based strategy. So basically, how it starts is with the foundations. So setting up your account to be optimized, and you're doing keyword research, being aware of like which keywords are relevant to who you're trying to target, and setting up the foundations of your account, which is, I guess, similar to, I don't know a great deal about Google SEO, but like it's about starting with foundations first. And so then once you've got your account set up, and you would start with I would usually recommend, say, having 12 or 15 boards to start with. That's when you start adding in your pins. And again, this is all SEO optimized. So there's a lot of places where you use keywords. So that's within your boards and your profile, and then also on your pins. And so basically when you make a pin, you're creating a pin to link back to a particular URL. So whether that's a blog on your website or it's a product in a shop, etc., you're creating an image where you're wanting to convey to the pinner what they're going to find. So it should be a visually appealing image with some overlay or text that gives relevancy and tells people. So it might be like the title of the blog post, or just gives them some sort of relevance as to what they're going to find. And then that's what's on Pinterest, is the image, and then each image has a direct URL link. So that's how it's so easy to drive traffic, because Pinterest makes it so easy. Like every single image has a URL, and you can make multiple images for each URL as well. So you do have to be aware of intervaling and spacing out, but there's just you can keep driving traffic over and over again, and you can try using different images to see what appeals to your audience. So I guess in a nutshell, the SEO side and the keyword is what gets and the optimization of your account is what gets your pins found in a search feed. Because a lot of people, they come to Pinterest and they do a search, and on occasions people will go over and visit your profile to get more ideas of what you've got, but a lot of the time people won't necessarily even visit your profile, and they just interact with your pin from the search feed. So the keyword part gets you found, and then the other equally important part is the visual side. So having an image that stands out against all the other pins in the search feed compels people to click or to save it. It's eye-catching. It gives context. It's not just like a picture of, I don't know, like if you're a furniture store, it's not just a picture of a dining table. Like you have text overlay, etc., to convey and call to actions. It comes back to core marketing principles, really. Like it's about having a call to action up to why they should interact with the pin.
Yeah, and I suppose if I look at my own habits on Pinterest, when I'm on Pinterest myself, using it as a search engine, sometimes I land on people's pages from something I'm interested in, and I actually don't even know who it is. So it's kind of like, oh, who's this? And then you kind of, do a bit of an investigation on their website as to, who they are and what they do. But yeah, like I'm not actually following someone's pin as such, or like you said, I'm not looking for a particular person. I've been attracted by the hook, by the picture, by the call to action. And when I've landed on someone's website, if it's something that interests me, it's only then that I actually try and investigate who it is. And then I guess, that's good for them, because I'm still on their website and I'm having a look at the different pages and spending time, which is great for their SEO. So I guess if we look at our own habits, we do get to see a little bit of how Pinterest actually would work. So
and if they've got their website well optimized for conversions, then there's likely to be pop-ups or links to other blogs, and you could end up on their mailing list, whether it's a discount for a product-based business or whatever.
Yeah,
and then
they have their remarketing targeting set up or something like that. Yeah.
Exactly, because you're going to have a variety. Like a lot of the traffic is going to be cold traffic, so it can be a long term. So you then need to nurture them on your email sequence, etc. Or it might be that someone saves your pin and doesn't necessarily click on it, but comes back to it later. Like say if they're planning a wedding or a party or something like that, they might collect all these ideas and go back, and then they interact with and click through. So it's not necessarily as instantaneous as Facebook of thing, although it can be on the other hand.
Yeah, yeah. Now, I guess that kind of answers my next question, which is, how do people get started? So I guess when someone gets started, they've got to sort of work out their keywords and, imagery and that sort of thing. Is that where you would kind of start as a business owner wanting to head down the road of Pinterest?
Yeah, basically. I mean, like what you can, like in the very early stages, what you can do, particularly if you're new to Pinterest, or even if you have used it, like you said, is to use it as a user, but sort of reverse engineer, like think about it from, a business point of view, and what sort of things do you search for, and what sort of things grab your attention and entice you to click or to save, sort of thing. So that will kind of give you an idea, and then you can start doing some keyword searches for, like, just play around with keywords that are relevant to your industry, and you'll be able to see from the search results how popular they are. Basically, if you get a lot of results come up in a feed, and then so when you put a search into Pinterest, you'll get a lot of little coloured tiles underneath the search bar, and each of those tiles is essentially a long tail keyword. So it's like if you put in makeup, and then you've got natural, vegan, all these sort of keywords underneath, then you can keep clicking through. So if there's a lot of searches, if there's a lot of content there, then it means it's a highly searched topic and worth exploring. So then when you do get to that, like if you have decided to start on Pinterest, then I do recommend sort of working from the foundations up. So making sure that you're using a business account and setting everything up properly, claiming your website, and then building your boards. I do actually have on my website, I've got like a freebie, a beginner's guide to setting up, and it kind of walks through those steps. So building up your boards, and then once you've kind of got it set up, then you need to think a little bit about the strategy, because like I said, it's not just putting up an image for a blog post and hoping that it does well. It's about sending it to several different boards and making sure that that's spaced out well, and trying different images. Like, it's a little bit of, I guess, experimentation and trial in the beginning. But once you get that sort of strategy honed in, then it becomes a lot easier and the results are worth it.
Yeah, beautiful. So for anyone listening who's out running, jogging, or in the bath or driving, I will have a link to Belinda's website with that little freebie in it. So don't stress about that. Just head to the show notes and you will find that little link there. Maybe you've answered my last question. I don't know. My last question I had was sort of like, what's the biggest tips and tricks, or the biggest tip or trick you could give somebody who perhaps hasn't been on Pinterest before as a business owner? Do you have any recommendations or tips that you could give them sort of as a final parting word to encourage them to look into Pinterest as a strategy?
So I guess sorry, that just went a bit more. Okay, all right. So I guess my biggest tips would be around consistency and experimentation and patience. So Pinterest isn't an overnight success. It's not as instantaneous as something like Facebook. It can take a little bit of time to build the strategy up. But that sort of decreases over time once you've kind of got your strategy in place. And because I probably haven't mentioned already, but Pinterest content is evergreen content. So when you put a pin up, it doesn't just disappear into a news feed or etc. like say on Facebook or Instagram. Like if you've optimized it correctly for SEO, anytime the right search is conducted, it's going to come up and you're going to continue to get traffic. So in some cases, like, it might vary on trends and times of the year or whatever. So it might take a little bit longer than usual to get traction. And then sometimes people will get like a pin going viral, 6 months or a year after they actually pinned it, just because it took a little bit of time to get some traction.
Yeah.
But then it's always there. It doesn't disappear. So that's a really good thing to keep in mind. Like I've found when I'm doing keyword research or whatever, like say for clients, etc., sometimes I'll find some pins that are really high in the search engine, and I'll generally hop over, like if it's a good quality pin, hop over and have a look at the profile to see what other content they have and if it's a good account to follow. And sometimes the account hasn't been active for a year or two, and I wouldn't necessarily advise that, but it kind of just shows the power that, like, they've obviously had a presence on Pinterest and were consistent for quite a while, and then for whatever reason they seem to have stopped using it, but they'd still be getting a heap of traffic from that, from those pins from a couple of years ago. So I guess, yes, it does require a little bit of time and patience, but you can kind of almost think of it as an investment. Yeah, so basically what I'm trying to say is that because it's evergreen and it's going to be there forever, it's not really a waste of effort in building up your account. Like it might take a little bit longer than Facebook to get your results, but sometimes I'll have people say, oh, I want to give Pinterest a try. I'll give it a go for a month or two. And it's just really not long enough to give it a fair go. You probably need to give it a good 6 months to start seeing the results. But yeah, if you think of the long-term goal and the benefits you can get from it, it's worth putting that little bit of extra time in at the beginning to work out your strategy and set up your foundations. And then it becomes a little bit more automated and you can get the great results. So,
yeah, I guess if you sort of look at like a lot of my clients and a lot of people in my world write blogs and things like that. So, and one of the terms that gets thrown around a lot, and I know I talk to my clients a lot about it, is repurposing, like, making sure that, you just don't write a blog every week and then you only talk about that particular blog each week. So I guess Pinterest has a really organic way of doing that for us. If we've got a pin about that blog and it stays evergreen, then there's a chance that traffic will continue to go to that blog long after, we've written it, type of thing. So
yeah. And you can facilitate that as well. Like if you've got a post that's really popular, you can create new images for it and you can update it, which will help with your Google SEO, and it might be just a few tweaks to update some information. And then you can put the new image out and regenerate the traffic as well, and it's already got the high statistics behind it. And then that, it's a snowball effect that helps with your Google SEO if you're getting a lot of traffic to via Pinterest. Because if you think about it, when you Google something, a lot of the time, depending on what it is, a lot of the time it's Pinterest results that appear in there. So, so they can work hand in hand.
Yeah, seems to be if you Google somebody, you get a LinkedIn result. You Google something, you get a Pinterest result. That's
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Belinda, this has been so good. I've learned so much, and probably my goal for having you on the podcast was just to plant that little seed in my listeners' heads of, not to dismiss Pinterest, that it's not just for product-based businesses, although if you are a product-based business, it could work amazingly for you too. But maybe we're heading into 2020. If you're listening, maybe it's just something to give a bit of time and love to, and give the go. I would certainly encourage you to go to Pinterest and I was going to say Google. It's not a Google. Go to Pinterest and search what you do and see what comes up. See how many people are on the platform that are actually doing what you do. I think people would be pleasantly surprised, wouldn't they, Belinda?
Yeah, that's often a bit of an eye-opening, like if I'm having a strategy session with someone and sort of do a bit of a search and show them, a lot of people are quite amazed. So yeah, definitely give that a go.
Yeah, beautiful. So, Belinda, if you've said something on the podcast that people are really quite interested in or they want to make contact with you, what's the best way that they could get in touch with you about Pinterest?
So my website is www.yoursocialbee.com.au. Probably either email or Facebook. I am on Pinterest, of course, but it's not really necessarily a messaging platform. So by all means, you can visit my Pinterest account and definitely have a look. But yeah, if you want to get in touch, you can. My Facebook page handle is Your Social Bee. Or via email.
Yeah, perfect. All right, Belinda, thank you so much for giving up your time and coming and having a chat with us. I found this really interesting and I know that my audience would too. So extremely thankful for your guidance and expertise on Pinterest today. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It was a lot of fun chatting to you.
No worries. Thanks, Belinda.
So are you convinced that Pinterest needs to be on your radar for 2020? I really hope you enjoyed that episode as much as I did making it. For those that are interested, I have actually started my Pinterest journey just this week. And so rest assured that I will be letting you know about my progress or lack of as time goes by this year. No doubt I'll be doing another episode about what I found, how I think it's helped my business, or perhaps if it hasn't helped my business, I will be completely honest with you all. But it's definitely something I'm prepared to invest in and see if A, I can use it for business, for repurposing all my content, and B, to see if I can break into an international market with my podcast. Of course, that is all for episode 56. I will be back next Thursday with another cracking episode to help you simplify your business in 2020. If you're enjoying the podcast, please don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. I will be throwing some episodes into the mix that no one will get notified about unless you have actually subscribed to the podcast. So it might be just worth your while to do so. And of course, I would love it if you would share this with a friend. If you're still in a gift giving mode in January, I would love it if you took 2 minutes to leave me a review and even a rating, which I think will take you all of 5 seconds. Those things are really like gold for podcasters like me, and it would just mean the world to me. Of course, I will see you next week for episode 57 of the podcast. But in the meantime, I'd love to connect with you on social. If we're not on social together, then let's get social on social. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn, which is my favorite platform, just saying. But of course, as my opening song says, there is no point in dreaming small.
Say it proud, be true, and let us see you for the star that you are.